What's up, guys? Welcome back to a new Dying Light 2 video. This video is kind of important, actually. We recently, like literally today when I'm recording this, got this article that came out, and it really changes how we can look at Techland and how we can really look at Dying Light 2 development as well. Now, there hasn't been any response from Unsi or Techland, and I'm assuming they're probably going to put that out tomorrow or sometime soon at least. And as you'll see soon here, they're going to need to have pretty good reasoning for why this is fake, because this is, if this is real, this is definitely game changing. So as you can see here, I have this tweet pulled up by Kirk McKeand, I think is his name. And he's actually the author of this, and as you can see here, for the past few months, I've been speaking to Techland employees about a studio that in their eyes suffers from toxic leadership. Here's a full report as well as responses from the studio CEO. And as you can see, here's the article. It's on a website called thegamer.com. I've never personally heard of it. So there's definitely still some questions to be asked on whether this is fully legitimate. But as you'll see here soon, this is kind of hard to fake if all these quotes are real that this guy has. So starting off this article, we see here he's interviewing 10 current and former Techland staff. So he's actually interviewing people that are still working there as well. And this first paragraph kind of sets the tone for the whole article. You can see a quote that says, "The fish rots from the head." And really what happens in this whole article is these employees are really just saying how kind of bad of a CEO the Techland CEO is. He says here, multiple people independently shared a story of an artist who turned in some work that the management disliked. The feedback they received was pedalski, which translates to too faggot-like. So they basically called his artwork too faggot-like. I mean, and then when he speaks to the CEO, he actually says it touches on a very important issue, which is trying to improve its communication standards. He then goes on here to kind of say how they're trying to communicate better and how they're clashing ideas and opinions. Then down here, he says how they're kind of working on this with training sessions. And he says they don't discriminate against gender, color, or sexual orientation. Then the author actually says here that the people he spoke to actually said it's a different story. There was another situation, like it says, a few years ago where they were discussing one of the core design pillars, which is the modern dark ages. And one of the leads actually blurted out, "At least they know how to deal with women back then," which obviously isn't professional to do in a meeting at all. And then he says the person who was responsible was reported to human resources. There's another catch with the human resources, actually. So the CEO of the company is Pawel, and the actual lead of the HR side of things is actually his wife. So there's actually points in this article that say it's kind of a conflict of interest, and it definitely is, because if the CEO Pawel is actually doing these things that it says in this article, you'll see more of them later on. And employees actually have to go to his wife to actually get these things settled. It's really not viable. And it's definitely a conflict of interest and doesn't make much sense at all. I mean, are you really going to go to your boss's wife to resolve problems you're having with him? And Powell actually says here he doesn't think it's a conflict of interest at all. He says they're professional at work. So I mean, I don't think it really matters. I think either way, it's going to be a conflict. Then they say here how Pawel, the CEO, has a photo of a naked woman next to a cheetah in his office, which I don't really mind, to be honest. I don't think there's a big deal about that. Then he says down here, according to sources, which I'm guessing is obviously the employees, that you can try to get on his wife's good side to actually get some of your ideas implemented. And apparently one of the bigger problems here is that Pawel is actually... It says here he's an ideas man. He really has influence over all the sectors in Techland, except for programming, because in the article it says he doesn't really understand programming, so he kind of just lets that be and lets them do their job. And one of his ideas here to promote Dying Light 2 actually apparently was to drive an unmarked van down the Mexican border and offload a pile of body bags, sparking a macabre ARG that would eventually reveal itself to be part of the game's marketing campaign. And surprising enough, we actually did get some footage of this. I'll play that right now. No, I'm just kidding. It's not actually fucking footage if you thought it was. But Yeah, I still don't know what a macabre ARG is. I have no clue what that is. Maybe I'm dumb. I don't know what that is. Down here it says some of these ideas serve only to separate the imagination from limitations. So Pawel, as it's described later on as well, he kind of likes to get things done cheap according to the employees. So if there's something that's going to cost too much, he'll tell them to, make it more cost effective or it's not going to work. Stuff like that. Down here we see he had another idea to send out medical test kits and people could test themselves to see if they were susceptible to the in-game pathogen. And then it says because the kits were real diseases though, you might also find out you have something seriously wrong with you. So that obviously isn't a good idea. Then we're talking about how Lucas Jonas got hired from Kingwin, which is a G2A type operation, which is disliked by the Polish game industry. I can wonder why. G2A is not really like an official site, but it's not really where you want to go. Like you want to go to Steam or somewhere. It's G2A. It's G2A. I can't even explain it, but if it's a knockoff of G2A, that's kind of concerning, to be honest. But yeah, apparently they hired that guy for, what was it? For the director of marketing, so that was interesting. And they did that in May of 2020, so that might explain why we haven't had anything in 2020. Then he says here, many of the team members are of opinion he didn't have enough experience for the job. He said the quality of the company's Facebook page was dropping. And there's a general consensus in Techland that marketing is not doing much and seems incompetent. Yeah, that's pretty obvious from the outside as well, to be honest. I mean, down here we actually get a stat of 20 people leaving Techland out of the studio of 400. Don't know where these numbers are coming from. Maybe from the employees on the inside. I don't really know. Like I said before, I mean, there's obviously a chance this article is real. There's a chance it's not real. We really have no idea. But I mean, as far as him faking all these quotes, I just can't see that happening. He would get sued or something. Quote from one of the employees, Techland has a history of hiring people with high hopes, but they end up with nothing. They hired Mark Albanet, a former game director from Ubisoft. He was a veteran of 30 years. Wow, that's 30 years. And they said he couldn't even break the upper management that is harder to change than the spine of the fucking earth. So yeah, it's really starting to seem like Pawel just shuts down a lot of ideas, even if most of the people on the lower level think it's a good idea and think it should be implemented. Another quote, whenever an expert starts advising things that are not aligned with the board's agenda, they slowly get isolated from the project and responsibilities. That leads to them leaving or eventually getting fired. Wow. And he says, to make a career at Techland, you have to be subservient. Wow. And then according to Marcheka, they've had employees there for 30 years for a long time, kind of making the case that it's not as bad as they're saying, I guess, which is a pretty fair point. Why have there been people there for 30 years if it's been this bad? I mean, then he says making games is tough and it's normal, and sometimes there needs to be change in the workplace and look for new challenges. He says, I'm very sorry for the employees that left us and decided to find their ways outside the structure of Techland, and I'd always wish them the best. Multiple sources tell me about a cult of external consultants. They claim Marcheka trusts outsiders more than his staff. And he says once they're Techland employees, there's a grace period of a couple weeks where their ideas are still listened to, but that trust soon dissipates too. Well, that doesn't really make much sense to me at all. I don't see why them becoming Techland employees would make a difference. See, there's like little stuff in some of these quotes, like this doesn't really make sense to me. How could that really be a thing? If he really likes these people on the outside and he brings them in, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Apparently, the first Dying Light, there was unanimous sentiment at the studio that we can't do that again. Basically stating here that the workflow was just not right. It wasn't going to work for Dying Light 2 or any future games. Another quote says, there's horrible management decisions and a lack of coherent vision, and it makes people slowly spiral into an apathetic state. They also say that they have no idea what the final game will be or what the story is. It's changed so much. People kept quitting, getting fired. So this is obviously contradicting to stuff we've seen in the past with, not contradicting, but contradicting to what I believed in the past. I thought that maybe the story might have been done And we had Pawel Selinger moving on, and we had another writer moving on to a future Techland project. I thought maybe the writing would have been done. It would have fit. It would have made sense. As you can see here, according to my sources, Selinger felt like he was working with Frankenstein's monster, a story stitched together by various parts. The only problem I'm seeing here is everyone that is left to Techland, like Selinger, Chris Avalon, they're all giving him positive feedback, and then we see these sources that are saying otherwise. So that is one thing that's not adding up. Like, I don't understand why that would be. If this thing really is a disaster, then why did Chris Avalon and everyone else was basically saying it's been a good time working with Techland? Like, I'm not seeing why they would be putting out those statements. Quote, Techland in general has the creativity killing vibe. Since everything in the end is changed by the directors, every presented idea has to have plenty of references. If you have references from other games Marcheka may not know about, you might as well not have any references. And anything slightly innovative or expensive is off the table. Then we have down here, when Marcheka might say your work is fine, but then the creative director, Adrian Suzuki, might disagree. Suddenly, Marcheka will disagree as well. Has Pisa seen it? Which is Adrian. It's an inside joke when he's the only person Marcheka defers to. So basically, for these employees, basically just a nightmare to get their ideas approved or to get anything in game, it sounds like. Eventually, when you're told you're bad at your job enough times, you start to believe it. It's a terrible thing because it stays with you. It makes you think you don't know shit. Definitely not a great mindset to have in a workplace. And it turns out the 2019 original date for Dying Light 2 was actually given by Marcheka. It says here this was an unrealistic deadline dictated by the CEO. The employees knew it was impossible. So, and then thank God he backed out of it. Personally, I think Techland putting a date that early in 2019 and just putting a date that early was definitely a mistake and hurt them big time. If they would have just kept silent about this thing, it would have been so much better. Right here, one of the employees actually said Marcheka gives a famous line of feedback, which is, that just looks bad, or this character looks gay. So, I mean, I don't know why he's telling his employees that their artwork looks gay. I mean, you can't really do that, man. Especially if you know they're gonna get offended by it. Why are you doing that? What are you doing? I mean, I don't know how all these quotes could really be fake. There's just no way. This many quotes being fake, this guy would get sued out of his mind. Pawel Marcheka, the owner of Techland, is a billionaire. This guy would get sued out of his pants. He'd be done. He'd literally be done. So I really don't know. Techland better have a really good reason to convince me that this isn't real, because I'm not seeing it right now. And then some of his crazy ideas, like going on the Mexican border and actually dropping, I don't know, a bunch of shit down there to make like an announcement about Techland releasing Dying Light 2 is just wild. Like, what the fuck? Doesn't even make sense, really. So basically, this goes on for a while. This is a very long article, and there's just no way I can cover all of it, but the moral of the story of it is, basically the CEO of Techland is kind of claiming in these quotes that, you know, they're kind of working on these issues. They're getting better. Communication, they need to work on it, but it's getting better. And what we see these employees basically claiming is that the CEO is way too caught up in his ideas and what he wants for the game. And whenever there actually are good ideas promoted by the lower employees that are actually working on the game, they're shut down. One of the employees even said that there was an idea that was approved for a month. Pawel, the CEO, came back, ended up shutting down the idea, and they had to restart that whole process of coming up with another idea. So the question here really is, who is right? Which side of the spectrum is actually telling the truth? I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Maybe it's the CEO. Maybe it's the employees. It's really hard to tell. That's why it's going to be really important for us to pay close attention to what Techland puts out about this. That could tell us sort of which way this thing's going to go. But yeah, after watching this video, I encourage you to go ahead and read the full article. I fit a lot in here, actually. Probably as much as I could to keep your attention, maybe. But I couldn't go over the whole thing, so definitely go read it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's going to be hard to change my mind. Like, we've had so many of these articles already. I don't know, dude. it's going to be hard for them to change my mind that Dying Light 2 isn't having problems at all. Like, there's no way. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. That's it. Definitely not a good sign at all. But thank you guys for watching, and yeah, subscribe if you enjoyed, like the video if you enjoyed it, share it to more people, get it out there, comment, all of that stuff helps. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.